Gentlemen, today we're going to be taking a look at 7.4, which is the percent proportion. This is actually going to be a 2-day lesson. Today we're going to talk about just kind of what to do if you get a regular math problem, and then tomorrow we're going to talk more what you do if you have a word problem. So let's go ahead and start our notes here. So 7.4 is the percent proportion. Our learning target is I can solve percent problems using proportions. Now we have two different proportions that we're going to use. Part over whole equals percent over 100 is a super useful proportion for us when we're solving percent problems. Part over whole is just like a fraction. Think about if you eat 2 slices of pizza, you ate part of the pizza, and there was 8 total slices, that would be the whole. However, part and whole is kind of hard to understand sometimes when we just have a normal math problem, so instead we're going to use the words is and of. Is going to be the action word for part, and of is going to be the action word for whole. So our is, our of, and our percent is actually going to be like variables, and we're going to figure out what numbers those are and substitute them into the proportion. The 100, or the bottom right-hand corner of our proportion, is always going to be the same, so that one's pretty easy to figure out. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple examples. Our first one is find 28% of 70. So you'll notice that this is very similar to the problems that we were doing yesterday when we multiplied the decimal by that number, but today we're going to use a proportion instead. So the first thing that I look for is a percent symbol, and I see that next to the 28. So I know that the percent is going to be the 28, so percent equals 28. My problem ends by saying of 70, so my of equals 70, and I don't have an is, that's what I'm looking for, so that's going to be my variable. We're going to use this set of data right here, these three numbers, the x, the 70, and the 28, inside of our proportion. We're going to treat them like variables and substitute them in. So the first thing I'm going to do when I set up my proportion is put a 100 in the bottom right-hand corner. Now I like to focus on the right side of the proportion first because it's already done for us, especially if you have a percent symbol right there, 28. The 28, the percent always goes above the 100. Now I can take my is, remember my is and my of, looks like that, and I can just slide them right over. So instead of the is, it's going to be an x, and instead of the of, it's going to be a 70. Now that my proportion is set up, I can cross multiply and divide. So 100 times x is 100x, and 70 times 28 is 1,960. I divide by 100 on both sides. Those 100s cancel out, and x equals 19.6, or 19 and 6/10. Okay, let's take a look at another example. This problem says find 60% of 25. The first thing I notice is my percent sign, so I'm going to say percent equals 60. My problem ends by saying of 25, so of equals 25. My is going to be my variable, so is equals x. Now I'm ready to set up my proportion, making sure that I put 100 in the bottom right-hand corner. Now remember, we're going to take these three numbers right there, including the x, and we're going to plug them into the appropriate spot in my proportion. I always like to start with the percent because that always goes over the 100. And now I can take my is and my of, and I can just slide them right over. Is goes on the top, and of goes on the bottom. Now I can go ahead and I can cross multiply. 100 times x is 100x. And 25 times 60, I got to take out my calculator here. It might be a good idea to have one of those ready. 25 times 60 is 1,500. Now I can divide by 100 on both sides. Those 100s cancel out, and x equals 15. So for our two problems right here, we were looking for the part, or we were looking for the is. Now my variable is not always going to be on the top left. Sometimes it's going to be in the top right, and sometimes it's going to be on the bottom left. So let's figure out what happens when we're missing the percent. So in this problem it says what percent of 84 is 21. The first thing I notice is that there is no percent sign, so the percent is going to be my variable. Then when I'm reading the problem, the first thing I run into is of 84, so of equals 84, and my problem ends by saying is 21, so is equals 21. So I'm ready to set up my proportion by putting 100 in the bottom right-hand corner. Now if we notice, our percent is a variable, so my x goes above my 100, and now my is and my of I can just slide right over. 21 goes on the top, and 84 goes on the bottom. Now I can cross multiply. 84 times x is 84x, and 21 times 100 is 2,100. We divide by 84 on both sides. Those cancel out, and x equals 25. Remember, we're looking for a percent this time, so I need to make sure that I have a percent symbol in my answer. Let's take a look at another example. 24 is what percent of 60? So I don't have a percent, that's what I'm looking for, so that's going to be my x. My problem starts by saying 24 is, so my is equals 24, and my of is going to be 60. Now I can set up my proportion, starting with 100 in the bottom right-hand corner, and my variable is going to go above because I don't have a percent. Remember, the left side is always is over of. So instead of the is on the top, I'm going to put 24. And instead of on the bottom, I'm going to put 60. I like to organize it this way so I can just slide those numbers right over. Now I can go ahead and I can cross multiply. 60 times x is 60x. And 24 times 100 is 2,400. Divide by 60 on both sides. Those ones cancel out. And x equals 40. And don't forget the percent sign since we were looking for the percent. So far we've had our variable in our percent spot and we've had our variable in our is spot. So sometimes when we're doing our problems, our variable is going to need to be in our whole. 40% of what number is 18? So I noticed that I have a percent symbol right there again, so that's helpful. So I'm going to put a 40 right down there. And my problem ends with is 18. So my is equals to 18, and I don't know what my of is. Now I can set up my proportion starting off with 100 in the bottom right hand corner, and remember the percent always goes above 100, which in this case is 40. The is going to go on the top, which is 18, and the of goes on the bottom, which is x. Now I can cross multiply. X times 40 is 40x, and 18 times 100 is 1,800. Now I can divide by 40 on both sides. Those cancel out. And now I need to do 1,800 divided by 40, and x equals 45. All right, last problem. 28% is 35% of what number? So I see my percent symbol right away, so I'm going to plug that in for 35. My problem starts with is 28, so the is equals 28, and I don't know what my of is. I'm missing my whole, so that's going to be my x. Just as we've done the rest of the lesson, we're going to set up our proportion by putting 100 in the bottom right-hand corner and the percent above it, which is 35. My is goes on the top, which is 28. I'll just slide it over. And my x goes on the bottom because that's the of. I can just slide that one over as well. Now I cross multiply. 35x equals 2,800. This time I'm dividing by 35. Those 35s cancel out, and x equals 80. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for our example problems. We did quite a few today. I know it's a little longer of a video than what we're used to. Remember, this is the percent proportion that we're using today. Is over of equals percent over 100. I highly, highly recommend making sure that you write the is and the of and the percent on the side just like this, filling them in as if they were variables, and then substituting them in to the proportion. There is no IXL for today, however, there is a very short worksheet. As always, do not forget to message me on Schoology if you need any help. When you're done with the worksheet, you can upload it for grading. Peace.